if you got 15 things down to 3 things, it's not overwhelming, right? But if you take your 3 things that take all 15 minutes, now you got the remaining 12 items or whatever the number is, and you got to crunch that in a minute. We talk about minor heart attack waiting. So kind of like putting all that together. And, honestly, it's just visualization. You got to visualize what you're doing.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning, this is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know where you're calling from or where you're listening from. Nobody calls in. We're not a call-in show. But where you're listening from, it's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. You can't get around one thing. Moving stuff around. I'm recording now, and we're about to be in the Christmas holiday. However, we do know that most of the stuff that comes around comes through trucks, small cars, and all those things. Let me give you my logistics story. So I was working at a guy's house who owned a trucking company, and he came to me and he was like, "Hey man, I think that a lot of people are missing out on a huge business opportunity because I understand the industry and I know how much we pay. If we manufactured a place where we can make pallets or refurbish pallets, I think we can make a lot of money." And I thought about it. I'm like, who want to get into remaking pallets? It's like when the trucks are moving from state to state, they have to have pallets. When they land at a portal or wherever they land at the truck stop or their location, the owner of the location, the spot, doesn't value the pallets because they just want the goods off the pallets, but they're left with pallets and they just throw them aside. And I was like, oh, rest in peace. His name was Bernard, one of my good friends I grew up with. Some years later, I interviewed a guy, and you can look back. It's probably like in the hundreds. We have 300 plus interviews up on our podcast now. And a guy who trains people how to refurbish pallets, and he says to make millions. And I was like, the only reason I took the interview was like, oh my God, Bernard told me about this way before I was interviewing the guy, and he calls the pallets like gold in the logistics business. So I had an opportunity to strike gold, but I didn't understand the industry. I didn't understand. I'm like, I don't want to have my crew creating pallets all day. My crew would have did whatever we said. Hey, they get paid at the end of the week. They was exchanging time for dollars. So I said, hey, we're gonna go into this warehouse and we're gonna refurbish pallets. That would have been easier than me going, hey, we got to go in this house and paint a closet. The hardest thing you can do is paint a closet because the space is so small.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And you got to be in that closet. Sometimes it could take all because some people are like, oh, I want an accent wall in the closet and I want this, and you got to still give the same attention to detail that you would give in an open space. It's easier and faster to paint an open space because the first coat don't really always mesh, so you go up and down. All right, I'm gonna give y'all a secret. No, not today, because we're not talking about painting or construction. So nope, you won't get that secret. But what you will get is the fact that sometimes when someone is in the industry and they come up with an idea and they see a collaboration between the two entities, instead of saying, I don't understand it and I can't see it, maybe my answer should have been, and maybe my answer would have been, in hindsight being 2020, let's sit down and really discuss it because I don't understand that industry and I don't understand the importance of the palette. But today we're going to discuss all things logistics. We got hot, hot, hot team,
Hi,
hot Tom, hot Tom with us. And I'm sorry, hot Tom. Um, I didn't want to mess up your name, but I wanted to introduce you properly. Can you tell our audience a little bit about you and what it is that you do? I have to charge my charger, so I'm gonna take my camera off, but I can still hear you, and my charge is right in my bag.
Sure. Um, yeah, I mean, my name is Hytham. I'm with Prestige Worldwide Logistics. We're third-party logistics freight brokerage. Essentially, we're the middlemen that connect manufacturers, aka shippers, who have palletized items, with our network of over 100,000 truckers. Um, Started this company in 2011, and kind of similar to your story with the pallet, I actually wanted to start a pallet business because they go hand in hand. So I'm very familiar with what it takes to get into the pallet business. And here in Michigan, one of the companies actually burned down the yard, caught on fire, and burned down all their inventory of pallets, which kind of created more of an opportunity. Um,
So they
Caught
burned
up.
down their pallet. Did they do it on purpose?
No, it was an accident.
So they say. I
Yeah,
know.
right.
Yeah. No, I've been to Michigan and I've done business there. So, how many generations? Like, how did you get into this business? What luxuries and all of those things that you see in the business?
Yeah. To answer your first part of the question, I graduated with a biology degree, first generation. So if you're not a doctor, attorney, or engineer, in the eyes of your foreign parents, you're no good, right? So I had to become one of those three. Chose to be a physician. I was capable, but then as I got my undergrad biology, I realized I wasn't willing anymore. So I always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I kind of just switched to pharmaceutical sales. And as a part of being successful in pharmaceutical sales, you needed to build a brag book. So that's where I started taking on different roles in different industries, and always was top sales rep. Worked for a company, top sales rep within the logistics realm, and a lot of my ideas were just hindered, didn't align with the corporate goals. And I was like, I saw an opportunity. Logistics is the backbone of America. Everything ships. I started basically when the recession was happening, and we were still making ends meet, making good money doing it. And so I was like, you know what, I could do this myself. And that's kind of how we started this venture. Basically, top sales rep, had big ambition, and branched off and started my own.
Was any of your parents entrepreneurs or anything like that?
Nope. One was a teacher and one was a welder.
So when you came to them with the story of I'm gonna be an entrepreneur and I'm gonna start this thing, how did that play out at the household?
My dad told me I'll go out of business in the first 6 months because I don't know how to manage money and I have too many ideas. But here we are.
Mm. How did that make you feel? I like these conversations. I'm trying to keep my phone charged. Go ahead. I'm with you. I'm just trying to charge up my computer.
Sure.
How does that make you feel?
I mean, like any son, I think they want the support of their parents. They want to kind of, you know, embark on a journey. And when you start anything, there's already a lot of doubts, right? Like you're in
Mm-hmm.
your own head. So the last thing you really want to hear is you're going to fail before you started.
Yeah.
So how did it make me feel? Honestly, it fired me up. I was like, I was determined to prove them wrong. You know, I was already kind of set up for failure. And I mean, I got a beautiful support system overall, right? A lot of people are scared to jump in business, and parents are always scared to guide their kids on paths that they're not sure about. So they guide them on what they're confident in, like go to school, get your job, you know, save your money and build your family, right? Well, what they had envisioned for me as the American dream wasn't exactly what I had envisioned for myself. So from a standpoint, one second, just go in another room. We'll edit this part out.
Yeah.
So from one standpoint, you know, yeah, it kind of hurt, right? You wanted the support of the family, but on the flip side, you know, if you're resilient, nothing's going to stop you.
What was it that about logistics? What hole in a logistics economy or service that you knew needed to be filled? And what instance inside of you, coming from a family of teachers and middle class teachers and all that, like those are high achievers, but they never really stepped out and said, I can be a game changer. What made you know that you was a game changer? Because you stepped into an industry
It's
and
just kind of
things.
in your blood. You kind of know, you know, I mean, anybody could do it. It's just a matter of actually taking the first steps and doing it. But for me, I just, I just knew that, whenever I walk into a restaurant or anywhere, like my mind doesn't say, "Oh, this is nice." My mind goes, "Oh, this would be better if we did A, B, C, D." Since
Yo,
I was
that's
a
so
kid,
funny. That's so
you
funny.
know, it's
So,
always been that way. So you just finally got to take initiative and make that change and do it.
how does that work when you go out with your close friends, people that really know you? Because only people that know that you're looking on how to fix things.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, you got to harness that mindset for the right people because you could be very annoying to some,
Yeah, no,
right? Like
yeah, yeah,
some
but
people are like, why can't you just enjoy the moment? Other people are like, oh, let's talk about this in more detail. Like, what triggered you to think that? Or, you know, they feed off that. So, you know, over the years, like in the beginning, it was all I talked about. Like, oh, if they put the tomato this way, if they put the fork that way, you know, like
then you
even
learn
when I
how
was
to.
surfing, you know, like put the front of the line like this, back of the line like this, put the salt and pepper here. You know, there was all these like little micro changes that would make the experience better. So you know, in the beginning, you kind of filter out through a lot of friends. Some friends are just not that mindset, so they just you know, kind of downplay it, right? Or they just don't want to converse about it. And if you value their friendship, you kind of just got to pick and choose the friends that you could do that with. But then I did realize that I was just doing it with everything, you know. So you know, to kind of answer your question, like knowing you're doing it, step one, and knowing when and who to do it with was the second part of it.
So when you decided that this is your journey, that this is what you was going to do, that you were going to pivot from sitting behind the desk. So if you're listening to us right now, I want to give a broad view of logistics. Logistics is fast paced. You have trucks going here, people saying my stuff is late. Like it's depending on how large or small your shop is, it's a high impact, high paced, high energy environment. Am I right?
Yep.
And in that environment, how are you able to slow your mind down and say, there's a void in this environment and I can feel it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Trying to slow the mind down is difficult. You kind of got to just find, the best practices to do it. If first and foremost, you got to like prioritize no matter what it is, because there's so much coming at you that, is it all really that important? So, when you're sitting there with a array of clients, say one rep is managing, I'm going to make it up 10, 20 clients, anything from like ping pong balls all the way to like, oversized items, different requests, different urgencies, different um, timing, different ways of approaching, different ways of communication. There's just so many differences involved that it does get overwhelming. So what's helped me kind of control all that is prioritize it. What needs to happen now, right? Communicate
Mm.
it. So, hey, I'm working on your request. This is the steps I'm taking to fulfill it. It buys you time. It puts the customer's mind at ease that like I acknowledge your message, I acknowledge your request. This is what it's going to take to get the job done, but I am working on it, and give me like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? So now say you have 10 of those at the same time. Just taking a deep breath, so prioritizing, taking a deep breath and like envisioning that. So I got 15 emails, all came in at once. They all want to pick up as of yesterday. All right, which time zone are we in? Which one needs it now, literally in our time zone, or which one's 3 hours behind, or whatever the case is. Prioritizing, you heard the thing, do the big tasks first, small task little second. Um, that kind of applies too. So if I have a multi-step process for a client, let me plant the seed. Let me send the request out, letting the customer know I received it. Let me send a request out to all my carriers in the network immediately, give them time to kind of respond to the email. Simultaneously, maybe I have a guy in mind. I'll pick up the phone and call him, and try to multitask that to um, get everything done within that like 15-20 minute time frame you gave. So prioritizing what needs to be done, communicating it, and then actually just executing on the easiest kind of tasks to get out of the way. Because if you got 15 things down to 3 things, it's not overwhelming, right? But if you take your 3 things that take all 15 minutes, now you got the remaining 12 items or whatever the number is, and you got to crunch that in a minute. You're talking about a minor heart attack waiting. So kind of like putting all that together. And, honestly, it's just visualization. Like you got to visualize what you're doing. Because if you don't, you're kind of doing a lot of back and forth, which eats up time. So
What
if
would
you
you
don't
say to
get all
someone?
the right info,
What would you say to someone who? And I like the whole key of visualization. Me, my first business was construction, so it was similar where you have, if I'm doing a few projects at the same time, we're behind on one, we're doing, and my default nemesis was avoiding conflict. And the reason why I avoided conflict, because I didn't know how to handle my energy towards conflict. So instead of me cursing the client out or losing my head, I would kick the can down the road. And later on, and I had to learn how to, as they say, use your words and explain, like you just said. But what would you say in the industry? And then we're going to talk about exactly what you do in the industry when you see when you saw some of your peers, and I'm pretty sure that you have peers like me that avoided the conflict, that didn't visualize the conversation, that didn't do the follow up phone call, that kicked the can down the road. How does that hurt or hinder someone in that area of logistics when you're managing 20 trucks and you have all of these expectations, and instead of just saying, hey, bro, there's nothing I can do from here?
yeah, at the end of the day, no matter what business that you're in, you're got to provide some sort of value, right? So what helps me understand what value we're delivering is communication with the client, right? Knowing what their needs are. You can't kick anything down the down the road in our field. So I put myself in my client's shoes, And that helps diffuse a lot of issues. If I just have some comment to make and I know they're not going to like it, yeah, you're going to try to like not go down that road. But, here's what is going on. Here's what I'm doing to resolve it. And here's what I can promise you. You're putting yourself in the customer's shoes. Like, okay, the truck flipped upside down. Your whole product's damaged. Your customer is going to call your customer, so on and so forth. Wow. All right. So just tell the client, like, listen, it's trucking. Things are gonna happen. You can't control what happens. You could control how you resolve the issue. And that's what I'm doing right now. So step one is notifying you something happened. Step two is get the information to then get to step three. What is the solution? And I'm going to get all this done for you in the next whatever time frame, depending on the severity of it. So, and I think a lot of this comes from dealing with different types of clients with different types of needs, right? Some people get frustrated that your truck is 2 minutes late. Some trucks get frustrated, or customers get frustrated that you didn't communicate, and you have. So every customer is different. So putting yourself in the client's shoes and acting as if you were the client, and what would you want delivered to you is kind of what we deliver back, and we have good intuition with that, right? So we start talking to the customer from day one as a prospect all the way to building a friendship with them down the road. So I mean, you learn who they are, you learn how they operate, you learn what they're looking for. Some people just want to make their bosses happy. All
Yeah,
right, well, I'll tell you what I want to hear. Some people actually just don't want to deal with it. They just want
you to
it
deal
to
with
be
everything.
handled. Exactly. So, just putting yourself in the customer's shoes and delivering, the value that that you find is most valuable for them and what you think they need. That's honestly the best way to go about it.
What was the process for you when you realized that you could do this as a business?
So I got hired in at this company, and I think I was a mistake hire. I was told, yeah, like the manager was dealing with some stuff, and I was just right place. I don't know, wrong time, I guess, but it turned out to be the right time for me. And it was 2009. I graduated college with a degree that I wasn't able to use. I was going into a field that was dying, or making big changes. So I really had to make this happen. And just from daily cold calling and the daily grind, um, I learned a lot. One of my biggest clients does multiple modes of transportation, meaning um, they imported items, and their client. So, it's all like kind of middleman stuff, right? So I'm a middleman between the manufacturer and the trucking company domestically, but there's similar models for, international. So our customer is what they call a freight forwarder, and they basically, coordinate the container ships from wherever overseas to the ports here and contact somebody like me to manage the domestic side of things. Well, they had a contract with Philadelphia to build all the trains. So I mean, just imagine all the parts going on a train, right? The axles, the seats, the panels, the whole nine. And that's when I was able to touch every type of trucking or shipment there was, from air freight to oversized to small pack to expedited. I mean, just the list goes on. And I would do it all. I would, a lot of the companies, they would just go find the client and pass it on to an account management or operational team. Um, we did it differently. We, held the communication with the customer and actually did the work. So whatever we communicated was trustworthy. It wasn't just hand me down information from the next person. And the customer really appreciated that. So once I got very, very skilled at speaking with the client and actually going into the world and actually doing the arrangements of the shipments, understanding what the truckers' needs are, what the rates would look like, what trucking companies' capabilities are, and align that with what our customer was looking for. It just made the connection very simple. Um, a lot of companies, like I said, they just, hey, you want to ship something from point A to point B, I'll connect you with my team. I mean, my team is an extension of me, but not every company could say that. I think I lost you. Mute it. Okay. Yeah, it's still muted. Gotcha.
So when you decided to launch out on your own, what was the
Is there anything I can do on my end?